typically a 4-year college before you arrive here at Drexel. Or you can go to a community college and then arrive here at Drexel as well. So these are the ways in which students end up here as Drexel students, either as undergraduate students or as graduate students. What is an American education like? Well, you have to realize that we have a global impact. Whatever it is we do in American institutions has a global impact. And that is obvious by the fact that we have close to 500,000 international students who are actually enrolled in US universities. You will also notice that American education, by and large, is a holistic system, all right, in which the following features, as I mentioned down here, do stand out. Namely that, by and large, it's a very friendly environment, university, right, with very informal classes. Faculty who will probably show up, if it's a nice hot day like today, in flip-flops and no tie and shorts. You know, that's the way we teach here in the US. It may be very different from the way you're used to, if, for example, you come from India or from China. You'll also notice that where the number of majors or disciplines is rather restricted in foreign universities or international universities, we essentially sell everything, right? From physical education to cooking to whatever it is. Whatever the market demands, we typically would provide or give. You also notice that we are not, our education is not based on the British system as it was years ago. For example, when I was a graduate student and undergraduate student as well in Australia, I could party for 6 months, knowing that all I needed to do was to study for the next 2 months, be ready for the final exams, and if I got through, that's it. I've cleared the whole year. There's no such thing as a quarter system where you get credits in the first quarter, more credits in the second, and so on and so forth. It was all or nothing. And it usually just was based on that final exam at the end of 8 months of instruction. So in my case, that was perfect, because as I said, I love to go and party, I love to be active in student activities, and all I had to do was put my nose to the book, with the grindstone, for the last 2 months, do well in the final exams, and then say, fine, I've got through another year, now let's go on to the second year. You don't have that happening here, okay? All right, what kind of a university is Drexel? If you don't know this already, we are a private institution. We are research intensive, like Cornell, like Yale, Harvard, because we are mainly, our budget is in fact tuition driven. That means most of our money doesn't come from, for example, endowment funds like Penn has or like Harvard has, with their billions of dollars in endowment. We have to run this place really from collecting tuition, mainly from the undergraduate students and from the master's students. So it's a tuition-driven institution with a very significant teaching mission. Right? That doesn't mean that we don't do intensive research, but by and large, our major focus has been on providing good undergraduate education. And then, as a result of developments over the last 10, 15 years, we have moved more and more to being a comprehensive research institution. This is the size of Drexel. This is the enrollment, all right? And of course, it's not as large as the enrollments at public schools like Ohio State or Florida State, places like that. You will notice that as far as you are concerned, there are 3 graduate degrees that are offered at Drexel, as there are available in most American universities that are research intensive, all right? There's a master's degree program, and of course you guys are not in that program. There's also the professional doctorate, the MD degree is available from Drexel. We also have a JD degree, DNP, EDD, so on and so forth. And then finally, the group that you are in, the PhD degree. And if you take a look at the breakdown, overall in the US, full 15% of all graduate students are enrolled in the PhD program. It's also understood I hope that that's clear to you people. What kind of responsibility you're shouldering when you say that you are now a Drexel PhD student. That our reputation, right, basically as a great university, this guy is fun drawing, as a great university, depends upon the amount of research that is being carried out inside the university itself. And you know that the PhD student is very integral to that particular activity. That a lot of the research that we do, that the faculty do, cannot actually be done unless we have the assistance of you people in the lab, in the classroom. Okay? All right. What kind of students, and if you look around, you'll probably gauge that, look, that's substantiated. The numbers that I've placed in that slide are substantiated in it. More than half the class will probably be female. Okay? That's typical of American graduate programs. Does that mean that the women are smarter? Could be. Or it could be that the women value tertiary education or graduate education and therefore demand a graduate degree rather than the men. You will also notice that maybe it's 50% overall who are women, but that if you are in the STEM areas, that means you are in science, technology, engineering, or in math, that number decreases to 35%. So if you look around, you're in the engineering program, that's probably what's going to happen. Yeah. All right. The doctoral students are in the main full-time. There are very few universities that will encourage somebody to do a PhD part-time. The only instances where we will allow somebody to do it part-time is if you are actually, say, working for a company like DuPont, and you are already engaged in a project, all right, that is very research-oriented. And then you are able to come to Drexel for some classes, for some coursework, and then you can lend yourself to a professor who is interested in what you're doing, and then there is that kind of collaboration that takes place. Then and only then will we allow somebody to do a PhD part-time because you want to maintain your work status at DuPont, as I said. Otherwise, the commitment has got to be full-time on your part. Okay? You will also notice as you look around in your classrooms that international students constitute about 40% of these doctoral classes and only 10% of the masters. So that's the composition of the class. All right, let's get back again to Drexel. If there are those of you who still don't know enough about Drexel, basically this is the administrative structure. You will notice that there is a president who stands at the very top, and then the administrative structure of the university is broken into two parts. There's the academic part that's headed by the provost, with the deans, with the graduate dean. Of course, we don't have a graduate dean, but basically I am the graduate dean. And then you have all the vice provosts who run various offices. And then, as you go further down that structure, you will notice that we have got the profs, the associate profs, the assistant profs, the adjuncts, the lab techs, and then the teaching assistants if you're an undergraduate student. That constitutes that part there of the university. Students are right at the bottom there. And then you have to be interacting with these professors. At the same time, because you have to be paying fees or you have got to be tracked, you have another administrative side to that university structure. And you'll be interacting therefore with Drexel Central, which is made up of the bursar's office and the registrar's office. So each quarter you'll get a transcript, update where your grades are given. That's done by the registrar. Then of course you heard Dean Ruth talk about student affairs and the kinds of activities that they organize outside of the classroom. All right, so that's the structure of the university. And you know that you are a student, that you have to in fact work with the people on the administrative side as far as the grades and the fees are concerned, and then you work with people like me and the deans and the professors on the academic side. And if everything works out well at the end of 2 years, if you're, well, you're not a master's student, so at the end of say 4 years, which is typically how long a PhD student takes to get through the PhD, or maybe even 7 years, as has happened in a number of cases where people just didn't have the luck to choose a topic and a supervisor that has worked for them. You take all the way up to 7 years to get your degree. All right, so how do you survive graduate school? If that's what's ahead of you, how do you survive it? I'll make sure that I get to the right spot. First of all, you have to be prepared for today. And I'm going to make the assumption that we did the right thing. We had the webinars. We sent you emails about how it is that you can get ready for the first few days of college and what will happen in the first quarter. That, of course, should have been done prior to today. And then today begins what we call the orientation period, and I'll say a little bit more about that. And then I'll move over to what will be happening for most of you in that first year and then beyond. All right, let's go and take a look at pre-arrival. I hope that we have actually covered this, we meaning the Office of Graduate Studies. We should have sent you newsletters, we should have sent you emails, we had those webinars that were conducted by the IGSA, and of course together with the ISSS, we made sure for you international students that you got your I-20, told you what to bring with you, how you were going to be met, so on and so forth. So all of that should have been taken care of. Now let's talk about orientation. Well, you came to our ceremony and you were told that, look, there would be the Dragon Expo, there would be all these tables that are going to be there later this afternoon, where you can go and find out more about university policies, about how you can join clubs, and etc., etc. All right, so that's part of the responsibility of the Office of Graduate Studies. And we have to make clear that you have to abide by university policies in order to get out with your degree. Now, what are these university policies? As far as the OGS is concerned, they pertain to academics. You've got to maintain a 3.0 grade point average at all times to remain as a proper or regular active graduate student. You've got to take the right number of courses and the right kinds of courses, and that's of course determined by your individual departments with consultation with my office, okay? Those are policies that you guys have to be familiar with. And I would suggest that you go to our website where we have a handbook called the Roadmap, where policies are written and explained hopefully in a very clear language in each case, so that you're aware of how you stand, what is your status, what are the fees you have to pay, can you take leave of absence, anything that could arise during the period that you're here as graduate students. We cover those topics, and that's what I suggest that you should do. Go take a look at our website and look through that roadmap. Hopefully we have been able to help those of you who needed housing. This afternoon, if you haven't done so already, we'll give you advice on how to create your bank accounts, make sure that all of that is taken care of. Because though classes haven't started, you don't want to be bogged down in taking care of housing and bank accounts and social security numbers, cell phones and all that kind of stuff that have really nothing directly to do with academics. You want those issues out of the way. That means you're settled in. You've got a place to bed down for the night. You know where you're going to get your food and so on and so forth. And then you are free to concentrate on the academic portion. Okay? And I would like to suggest that you try and settle all those things. Be familiar with the environment. Make sure that you know where the shops are. Make sure that you know where the buses are, and so on and so forth. All right? Take those campus tours. Take those city tours to familiarize yourselves with Philadelphia. Try and get in touch with the people at GSA. If there are any questions that arise, Gavan and a whole host of other volunteers are available to you to answer your questions. And then, of course, there's my office. We are always open. Got any issues, come and see us. All right, and of course, your department also has a certain responsibility. This is something that I want to remind you of. Even before you go to your first class, you need to know which classes you should sign up for. And that's what you need to do. In the next couple of days, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you huddle with your graduate advisor. graduate advisor meaning the departmental graduate advisor, because you may not have found a supervising professor as yet, as I will touch on later on. Talk to the departmental graduate advisor so that you know exactly the kinds of courses that you should sign up for if that's what you want to do. You want to get a degree in chemical and biological engineering, then fine. These are the courses that you're scheduled to take in the first year, in the second year, and so on and so forth. And make sure that you sign up for those courses, because if you take any courses outside of your plan of study, then you may be in trouble, because we will have this requirement, and you can see that in the roadmap, that states that you have to have 90 credit hours of PhD studies in order to be able to leave Drexel with a PhD degree. And therefore, those 90 hours are cobbled together by coursework as determined by your graduate advisor and by the research that you're going to be doing later on in your studies. So make sure that you are aware that, look, you have to do mathematics 505 rather than physics for 507, whatever it is. Right? Have that plan of study worked out with your graduate advisor and try and follow that plan of study as much as you can. If for some reason you don't do well in the course and you may have to repeat it, then go back to your graduate advisor and see what it is that you can do as a consequence to stay on track. All right, so what tips and suggestions do I normally give to first-year students? All right? Get that plan of study worked out with your advisor. Get all the other stuff with housing and credit cards and cell phones and all that settled so that you are ready to focus on academics. As part of the process of getting oriented to the university and to graduate studies, I always feel that, look, you got to be totally aware of your environment. So you got to go and make friends, because it reminds me of the time when I went from Malaysia as a scholarship student to Australia. And I can tell you that the first year was a completely traumatic experience for me. You know, I mean, I was coming from a third world country, from a village in a third world country, and I was going to a big city in a first world country, and it threw me off completely. It took me 1 whole year to get settled, and that did show up, as you want to look at my transcript, it did show up very clear. Straight A student, and bang, I was down to B's and C's in that first year, before I recovered and did well again in the latter part of my graduate study. So I don't want that to happen to you. So the only way in which you can really get settled is if you recognize the environment and you feel comfortable in it. And to make that happen, that's what we would always suggest, especially to international students. Try and make friends as soon as you can, all right? Including those from your home country. But hey, look, try and, you know, come to GSA activities. Try and see if you can, you know, enlarge that circle of friends that you can call on in times of need. Now, of course, if you're an international student, you know, there's the question of homesickness, and that's why, though I'm not actually plugging for Skype, this is not an advert for that company, I do suggest that you should try and get a Skype account, because that will make it easier for you to contact your friends at home, your family and all that. And there will be times when you will find that it's very comforting to know that, look, they can always appear on your computer screen, and it's almost as if they're next to you, and that can give you some relief. So remember that. As I said, settle your personal issues or things quickly, such as bank accounts and housing. If you want a peer-to-peer program, go to the GSA, and GSA has a peer mentor group, and they will pair you up with somebody who can hopefully answer, you know, your questions and help you out. Attend GSA activities. Go out, don't just stay at home. If you're going to make friends, you've got to go out to meet them. All right, adjust to the culture shock, again for international students and for those of you who come from, say, the Midwest and are not familiar with what it is like to live in the Northeast, or if you're from the West Coast. So adjust to the culture shock, watch what goes around you, and then try to change if you need to in order to fit in. Get involved in local activities. By local activities, I mean that, look, if you used to be a supporter of the Pittsburgh Pirates, now you got to maybe espouse the Phillies. You've got to, you know, realize that you're in Philadelphia, right? Throw away your old allegiances. And, okay. Because because then you meet somebody on the street. At least you can talk about something that's local, and that's essentially the launching point for maybe a relationship or something like that. Okay? Get familiar with resources and policies. There will be times again when you say, oh boy, I'm not doing well here, I need some help with the statistics. Where the heck can I find that help? And I want you to know, since I'm talking about statistics, that you can come to the Office of Graduate Studies and we can find you a tutor if that is what you need. Okay? So help is always available. You just need to know where to find it. All right. Try and manage your time as best you can. Now, I would suggest if you can go to the expo where there will be people who can tell you a little bit about how they've been able to manage it so that there is work-life balance. And I know that for PhD students in particular, I mean, once an experiment has started, you are stuck with it. It could be 48 hours before you can get your next reading, and you have to be there, right, to monitor the tubes and the knobs and all that kind of stuff. And, and then you have a date. You can't have both, right? So plan for that. If you're going to engage in this experiment, it's going to take a long time. Make sure that you look at your calendar and you don't schedule something that's going to happen in the middle of that lab session. So keep that in mind. And always make sure that you're never always just chained to what's taking place in the lab. You've got to essentially put in your calendar times when you don't want to have anything whatsoever to do with your PhD studies. All right? So that's the only advice I can give you. Make sure that you plan in these kinds of extracurricular activities because you have to remain sane. Right? What does a PhD entail? Here's a little plot again for students from overseas that tells them, look, these are the requirements for you to get your degree. And you'll notice that if you're going to get your PhD, it looks like the battery is right up in this one. It usually takes, 2 years of coursework, as you can see from that column there under PhD. And then, hopefully, by the end of the second year, you have got through what we call your qualifying exam. Right? The qualifying exam is really the way in which the department assesses your ability to get into research. And you know that research is part and parcel of a PhD degree. The PhD degree is not collecting a whole set of credits from coursework. Get 90 of those and then you get a certificate that says that you're a PhD. That's not the way the PhD is constructed. There is a dissertation on research that you have to do, all right, subsequent to this qualifying exam, or sometimes even before you get through your qualifying exam, because there's a tendency now for departments, for faculty members, to insist that you actually get started on research even as you're doing your coursework. So remember that that is going to be something that could happen. You can't just say, look, I'm taking all these courses, I don't have any time to do research. Well, most professors will say, well, you have to make time. All right? Maybe the demands will be less in the first year, and then it grows larger in the second year, and then it becomes your main focus in years 3, 4, 5, however many years are needed for you to finish your dissertation. So keep that in mind. First 2 years will mainly be made up of coursework, and then subsequently, when you get through your qualifying exam, it's going to be just research, research, research after that. All right, so what happens in that first year? Okay, we've gone through orientation, we've got settled. You will notice that, according to the plan of study that you've worked out with your graduate advisor, there'll be a whole slew of courses that you have to take. Now, these are the kinds of courses that essentially prepare you for when it is that you're going to be working full-time on your research. It means that we make sure that you have the understanding of that particular area that you're working in. We want to make sure that you have the expertise in it through coursework. So that, as I said, usually in that first year, you'll be taking 9 credit hours every quarter, all right, where you're going to be doing something in class with a whole bunch of other students, and then you have to maintain that 3.0 average that I said that you should have. All right, besides that, you have to understand the culture of graduate school and the role in it. So you're making the transition at the same time to graduate school. And in most cases, it could be broad-based, like those of you who come from China or who come from India, to something a little bit more focused, because that's exactly what the PhD degree is all about. And it can be a difficult transition, all right, switching from one system of education to another, or from undergraduate education to graduate education. If you are, again, from an international university where maybe the system of instruction is such that it stresses just rote learning or memorization, and it's lecture heavy, and you don't work in small groups or in teams, where it's what we call teacher-centric. That means the focus is on the instructor, not on you. It's going to be different here, because we flip it around and the focus is on students rather than on the faculty. And you won't be cramming for exams like you do, for example, in China and India. It's here, it's more free-flowing. We want to make sure that you guys know how to think out of the box. So these are the kinds of things that you have to get adjusted to. You will also notice that in that first year, again for international students in particular, there are certain skills that you need to develop, communication skills. The ability to talk and to write in English. Those are the kinds of things that are going to bother you in that first year. Right? As I said, if you happen to latch on to a professor or to a group where the professor says, look, I want you to start launching into research right away, or at least get familiar with it, that's again another adjustment that you have to make. What does it mean to do research? Okay? And usually it's spelled out in detail by the group or by the professor that you're working with. But in general, it's finding a research topic, a question that has been asked for which there is no answer, and what you do is you figure out that maybe you can find a way to get an appropriate answer to that question. And therefore you launch into studies that will allow you to arrive at the point where you say, fine, I've got a definitive answer to that question. That's what we mean by research. All right, some of you, because remember, as PhD students, very few students, if any, finance a PhD institution out of their own pockets. Is there anybody here who is actually self-funded to do a PhD? See, not a single one. You're either a TA, right? How many of you are going to be TAs? A whole bunch of you. Or you're going to be RAs. And so therefore, there is another responsibility that, that we put on your lap. If you're going to be an RA, that means you're beholden to the professor who has given you the funds to have that RA-ship. And there will be demands in the lab. You have to go and do research right away, whether you like it or not. If you have been funded by a TA-ship from the department, it means you have obligations to help teach some of the undergraduate level courses that our faculty are required to responsible for those courses. So you have got to be a good TA as well. There will be demands made on you in terms of the time that you have to spend in the undergraduate labs helping these students. And I have a couple of slides that will tell you what some of these responsibilities are that you have to shoulder as a TA. All right, so more first year. You've got to succeed in coursework. And the only way in which I can give you advice about what you have to do in order to be able to do it is work with the prof. If there are any issues that arise, make sure that you approach the prof and just say, hey, look, I don't seem to be able to handle these homework problems. Can you give me some suggestions as to how I can succeed? Read the textbook, and more than anything, I would suggest that you work with other students in your class, because they are in the same boat with you. And by sharing your problems, maybe you guys could teach each other how to succeed in that course. If that still doesn't work, then seek somebody who has taken the course before and find out from that person what it is that you're not doing right, and maybe they can give you some tips about what it is you can do. I think you haven't looked at this textbook, right? You haven't gone to this internet website. Well, there are lots of good stuff inside there that may help you get through that course. That's the kind of stuff that you should be, that you should be looking into. What about the qualifying exam? Remember, coursework is only one aspect of your PhD studies. Eventually, the day will come when you have to sit for this qualifying exam. So what is the qualifying exam? Is it just another essay that I have to write? No. In most disciplines, the qualifying exam is supposed to be an exam for which there is no textbook. It's an exam that encompasses everything that you have experienced as an undergraduate student. And there are questions that are locked in your direction from left field, from here, from there. Nothing whatsoever to do with any coursework as such. But there are general questions in which we will test. We, meaning the faculty, will test whether you have the mind, all right, to handle an issue, to look at all the variables that are involved, and then to come up with a sensible approach to solving the problem. That's the nature of the kinds of questions that you will see in qualifying exams. Nothing straight out of bookwork. Okay? It's more a test of whether you have the right thinking skills, the ability to think outside of the box, the ability to put all these variables together and come up with some cogent way of solving a particular problem. It's not that there is only one way to solve the problem. There may be many. And what the faculty will be looking for is whether you are able to realize that, look, there are all these different ways, and that you think that this might be the best way to solve that particular problem. So the qualifying exam is a very severe hurdle. A lot of students find they can't clear it. And if they can't clear it, what happens is you get second prize, and means they will cobble together your credits and tell you, I'm sorry, we can't support you any longer as a PhD student. The best we can do is offer you a master's because you got 45 credits, and I'm sorry, that's goodbye. Okay? So the qualifying exam is really, as I said, a very, very severe hurdle. How do you prepare for it? How do you get over it? Well, again, the advice is talk to the other people who are getting ready for that qualifying exam. Talk to the people who have already taken that exam and cleared it. Okay? Find out from them how they prepared for it, what kinds of questions they got in the exam, and how they answered those questions, and how it is that they succeeded. So that's the only advice we can give you. There is no simple step 1, step 2, step 3, look at this book, study that chapter, solve this kind of a problem. That's not the what the qualifying exam is. Okay? All right. All right. As I told you, the PhD requires you to find an advisor, right? And in order for you to find the right advisor, what should you do? Well, the advice we normally give to people who come up with that kind of a question is, look, try and make sure that you are aware of what the work is that is done by each faculty member in your department. Now, if you're not already obligated to a specific individual because you've got an RA-ship from that person, you are actually free to find the right person to work with. Remember, it's a two-way process. You might say, oh, Professor A is great. I've heard that she does this. Her students love her. She is very congenial. She is great. She knows a lot of stuff. She guides students well. Good, I want Professor A. It's, as I say, a two-way street. Professor A must want you to join her group, okay? So keep that in mind. I mean, you know, in the process of trying to identify the person that you want to work with, try and see if you can latch on to that group even for a short while and ask for permission. Professor A, I don't know who I want to work with, but I do know that you have these lab meetings with your team. Can I sit in and find out what you guys do by just acting like a fly on the wall? I'll just listen and I'll just try and gauge as best I can what it is that you are doing. And then hopefully, you know, you will like me because I'm taking this course with you, and I will like you, and maybe we could, you know, I could be your student. All right? So make that kind of a proposition and go to at least 2 or 3 of these professors if you have that opportunity, okay? Until you feel comfortable with one particular prof, and that prof hopefully is comfortable with you being in her group. That's when you then approach that prof and say, look, I'd like to work with you. remember that when the prof accepts you into his or her group, the understanding is that prof is going to find the funds to keep you in his or her team, okay? So that means the prof must realize that, look, you're going to be a useful member of a team, you're going to be able to help her to write a proposal that's going to get funds for the next 2 years or the next 3 years, so that your stipend is in fact covered. Otherwise, that prof will have to go scrounging all over the place, to the dean's office, to the department head's office, to find you a teaching assistantship, okay, if research funds are not available through these outside fellowships or grants. So you need always to keep in mind, okay, that you have to find somebody to work with so that there is some assurance of financial support for you, all right, beyond the first or second year. Because the contracts that you guys have received just commits this department or the faculty member to the first year. All right? To have that contract continue, you've got to do your bit. That means you have to satisfy the criteria set up by that prof or by the department in order for you to be able to go to the second year. Now, in general, the university tells departments and faculty that they should give a student a commitment for at least 2 years, if not 3 years, upon initial appointment. That, look, if everything works out fine, no matter what happens with funding, you will in fact be covered for the next 2 years or the next 3 years. Not all departments have that policy because they can't match it in the sense that their faculty really do require funds from outside, and there is no guarantee that they can get support for the next year or the year after. So you've got to be very careful about that. You know, it's all very well to say, I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Prof says, you know, the funds have dried up. I'm sorry, I can't support you any longer. Now, you could take that issue out of the university's hands, out of the faculty members' hands, by applying for an external fellowship. And that's why we suggest that if you have time, go and attend the fellowship session, okay? The NSF gives out fellowships to individual PhD students. You get one of those fellowships, hey, you really are in Fat City, because that fellowship will support you at the rate of $30,000 a year, much more than your typical stipend, for 3 full years. And over and above that, there's what we call a cost of education allowance that I am in charge of. And if you come to me having one of these fellowships and say, I want to go to this meeting, I want all of my expenses paid, it's essential for my research, I can dip into that cost of education allowance and support you, all right, for that particular travel. So really, it's a wonderful fellowship. And there are other fellowships like the GRFP from the NSF. And I would like to suggest that, that you guys investigate or look into the possibility of an external fellowship, all right? Because as I said, then you take the money, right, with you. And you're not beholden to anybody. You can say to Professor A, I'm coming without needing any support from you, all right? And I can tell you, speaking as a faculty member, you know, it's a great relief that I have the services of a student who tells me, look, he or she doesn't need a single cent from me. And it's good for 3 years. Can you imagine how attractive you are? You can pick and choose who you want to work with, essentially, if you get one of these NSF fellowships. And that's also not to say that, look, by the end of the fellowship, once you get your PhD, when you put it in your CV that you've got these one of these NSF fellowships, my golly, you know, openings always are available to you at universities, in industry, whatever the place is that, that you want to work with or for once you get out. All right, if you have found the right advisor, there is still the next question. All right? Prof is an expert on chemical and biological engineering, but you know, that is such a wide area. You want to talk about a specific project, a specific research question that you want to answer. And that's where you will find that, you know, it's going to take you a while. Do I want to stand in front of all these tubes and bubbling away for 24 hours a day every time I need to get a data point? Or do I want to do it with a computer where I just sit there and write a code and then create a model and get my PhD that way? you have to decide, okay, what is the right topic for your thesis or for your dissertation. And how do you make that determination? Again, by talking to students, by talking to the faculty, by doing a lot of reading, maybe going to meetings. And talking about meetings, my office has a travel subsidy program. So if you have a place that you want to go to, and you're prepared to put a poster together about some work that you have already looked at, but are not sure is going to be your PhD topic, we are going to be very happy to subsidize your travel to that meeting. And you go to that meeting and you find that, look, somebody talked about this issue. Hey, that's the one I think that I should be working on. So there are ways in which you can actually come to that final determination as to what the right topic it is that you want to choose. And note that once you choose a topic, you're going to be married to that topic for a while, because that's what the PhD is. If you're lucky enough to choose a topic where everything just falls into place, you want a piece of data, comes right out, got it. You know, you could be done in 2 years. But if you're unlucky and you don't, for example, see, you know, the results that are there, because I want to use the word serendipity to let you know that oftentimes it's luck. But in order to be prepared for that good luck, you have to be reading everywhere. You've got to be aware of what the heck is taking place in that field. So keep that in mind. Always be aware of what's happening around you. And then if someday something comes up, say, that's it. That's the topic that I want to do. And then hopefully, if everything works out, it might take you 2 years rather than 7 years to get your PhD. All right, let me see what else do I have here. All right, I told you that most of you, in fact, saw that you had your hands up, who are going to be TAs, and I will be talking to you again next week, all right? Because as TA orientation, all new TAs, unless they get an exemption from me, have to sign up for Education 775. But I just want to let you guys know who are going to be TAs, that there are these responsibilities that we're going to be imposing upon you as TAs. Typically, you'll have to work in the lab or in a recitation, and you'll have to take care of 2 or 3 of them each week. And what do you do in these recitations? Well, you solve problems, you explain lectures, and then if there are labs, you have to be there to guide them through what they have to do in order to get the results from the lab and how to write up the analysis of those results. And you have to grade student work, and then if there are exams, you've got to be present. If they are at 8 o'clock in the morning on a very cold winter day, hey, you've got to be there. Okay, that's your responsibility as a TA. There may be office hours. In fact, there should be office hours at which time you should be available to your students. And then occasionally, the prof has to go away for some meeting, and if the prof is confident in your abilities, you might be tapped to take care of those classes. So those are some of the responsibilities of a TA. All right, just let you know too that, you know, if you're a TA, this is what you typically the director of your course is expecting of you. Remember, as a TA, you need not be working with the supervisor who is guiding you in your research. It could be another member of the department, okay? And so this is the kind of relationship that you must have with this person who is really not your research supervisor. They probably want you to be a team player, they want you to be responsible. If there are exams at 8 o'clock and you've got to show up at 7:30, you better be there at 7:30, okay? You can't say, oh boy, I slept late. Here I am at 8:30. The exam is almost half over. You're going to get in trouble with that director. You're going to be prepared for these labs, for the recitations, know your stuff, be enthusiastic, be aware of the rules and all that kind of stuff. And TA orientation, as I said there, as a reminder, is what you have to do. All right. Finally, all right, there will be times during that first year when there will be these questions that you had actually looked at before you decided on graduate school and before you decided on Drexel. Why do you want a graduate degree? Do I really want to get a graduate degree? I don't really want to be a professor, right? What are your career goals? Is chemical and biological engineering my forte? Maybe it's materials engineering. These issues, these questions are going to come up, okay? Is Drexel the best school for me? I've gone through all these profs and I don't see one that matches me. These are the kinds of questions that will again arise in that first year. Then the final question, if you're unhappy, do I stay or do I leave? Okay. I'm certain that these questions will certainly come up in that first year. All right, finally for international students, as a member of the Drexel family, you're expected to involve yourselves in this community, okay? And it means basically sharing your culture and what it is that you do in your country with people here, even as you observe what we do here. All right, wish you guys all the very best here at Drexel. Thank you. If you've got any questions, I'll be very happy to take them before you guys have to leave for your next session. All right, so any questions? Anybody? Or have I touched everything? Or touched on everything? Pretty much? All right, good luck, guys. I'll see you around. Okay?